Morning television was never meant to feel like a battlefield. It was supposed to be warm and safe, filled with the chatter of friendly hosts and the easy rhythm of news, lifestyle, and entertainment. Coffee cups steaming on the desk, a touch of banter between colleagues, questions designed not to provoke but to reassure. For decades that had been the rule. But not today. Today, CBS Mornings had booked Meghan Markle. The producers knew it was a coup. Few public figures generated as much curiosity, admiration, and outrage as Meghan. Her name alone guaranteed headlines, guaranteed ratings. But it also carried risk. Risk that the conversation could veer into controversy. That her sharpness could cut deeper than anyone anticipated. Tony de Koopel, sitting at the polished glass table, was calm as always. His slate gray suit fit him like armor. His tie knotted perfectly. He flipped through his cue cards with the quiet certainty of a man who had done this 1,000 times. He wasn't nervous. Nervousness was for rookies. He had interviewed presidents, CEOs, and celebrities with egos larger than empires. He could handle Meghan, or so he thought. The studio itself gleamed, bathed in the familiar CBS palette of blue and gold. Giant LED screens glowed softly in the background, showcasing the network's logo and skyline visuals. Cameramen adjusted their lenses, silent and precise. Stagehands whispered final notes into headsets. The audience, small, carefully curated, shifted in their seats with anticipation. At the desk, Gayle King leaned over and gave Tony a quick, reassuring nod. She trusted him to steer the ship no matter how choppy the waters. Nate Burleson leaned back in his chair, relaxed, expecting a charming 8-minute segment that would generate some buzz and then fade away like most celebrity interviews. The stage manager raised his hand. "We're live in 30 seconds. And then Meghan entered. She swept in like she owned the space, every movement measured, graceful, deliberate. Her navy silk blouse caught the light, her hair perfectly styled, her posture regal without being stiff. Applause erupted instantly, rolling through the studio like a wave. The applause wasn't just polite, it was charged, tinged with curiosity and admiration. Tony rose to greet her, extending a hand. "Meghan, welcome. Delighted you're here." She took his hand, her grip firm, her gaze direct. "Thank you, Tony," she said smoothly, settling into her chair with practiced elegance. "Always nice to speak with journalists who value substance." The words were honeyed but sharp beneath the surface. Compliment or warning? Before Tony could reply, the red tally light blinked on. The cameras rolled. "Good morning," Tony began, his voice warm, professional. "Our guest today hardly needs an introduction. Actor, producer, philanthropist Meghan Markle joins us live. Meghan, thank you for being here." "Lovely to be here," she answered, ankles crossed, posture perfect. "Let's have a real conversation." And just like that, the sparring began. Tony started gently. "Your foundation has been doing incredible work, from women's education to community outreach. What's driving you right now?" Meghan smiled politely. "Impact, real impact. Not headlines, not sound bites." Her gaze flicked briefly to the camera. "We've had enough of those." Tony chuckled lightly, but inside he felt the shift. "Fair enough. But for the folks at home sipping their coffee, what impact do you want them to feel?" "Awareness, depth, nuance," she said, each word precise, polished. "Not reduction." That word, reduction, landed like a stone in water, rippling across the studio. Tony adjusted his cue cards, already realizing this was no ordinary interview. He tried another angle. "Your docuseries sparked conversation worldwide. Were you surprised at how much attention it received?" Her smile thinned. "Attention is oxygen for the media. My concern is whether that oxygen fuels growth or just more smoke." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Gayle scribbled a note. Nate raised his eyebrows. Tony nodded. "So you feel the media misunderstood your intention?" "I think the media rarely asks about intention," Meghan said coolly. "They ask about spectacle." "Isn't spectacle part of storytelling?" Tony countered. Her eyes locked onto his, unblinking. "Not when the story is your life." The air tightened. Even the cameramen glanced at each other. The conversation moved, but each question grew sharper, each answer heavier. Tony asked about her philanthropic projects, her new company, her children. "People want to know how you balance career and motherhood," Tony said. "Our children," she replied, voice crisp, "are not breakfast television content." The audience chuckled nervously. Gail cleared her throat. And the monarchy, Tony ventured. Was it harder than you expected? Her gaze hardened. Prepared for an institution that treats women like ceremonial accessories? No, but I adapted faster than most would have. Tony kept his smile fixed. Would you do anything differently looking back? Yes, she said, her tone cutting. I would have trusted fewer people. The words landed with a thud. Even Gail's pen froze mid-note. The tension only grew as Tony pressed further. Privacy, criticism, budgets, reconciliation. Each subject was a spark, and Meghan's replies were fire. Privacy isn't silence, she said. It's boundaries. If that confuses people, that's an education gap, not a moral failing. On the monarchy. Smoke and fire can't be separated. Tony, the system is toxic and I stepped off it. On critics. Critics are usually people who failed at doing what I'm doing. I'm not ambitious, I'm effective. By then, the studio was taut as a wire. Gail and Nate exchanged uneasy glances. The control room buzzed with nervous chatter. Should we cut early? Should we steer it lighter? But the ratings spike flashing across the monitors told them to keep going. Tony, sensing the danger but unwilling to retreat, leaned in. Maybe you mistake criticism for persecution. The silence was instant. Meghan's smirk appeared slow, deliberate. Persecution, she said, her voice low, steady, lethal, is when a woman tells the truth and men insist on reframing it. The line landed like a blade. Gasps echoed in the audience. Gail looked stunned. Nate mouthed, "Whoa." Tony's smile didn't falter, but his jaw tightened ever so slightly. The red light blinked off. Commercial break. Chaos. The stage manager rushed forward with water. Gail leaned in, whispering, "Tony, are you good?" He exhaled, still staring at his cards. Not for much longer. Meghan adjusted her cuff, serene. That went well, she said. Tony glanced at her, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. You came here to duel, didn't you? She gave a faint smile. No, I came here to correct the record. If that feels like combat, maybe the record was already broken. The control room debated frantically. Should they soften the tone, pivot, cut short? But the audience was buzzing, leaning forward, alive with tension. They wanted more. The countdown began again. 3, 2, 1. The red light blinked back on. The final minutes were calmer, almost staged. They discussed her children's book, her charity gala, her vision for the future. But the storm had already passed through. The damage, or the revelation, was done. When the cameras finally cut, Meghan rose gracefully. She hugged Gail, kissed Nate on the cheek, and turned to Tony with a cool smile. Good interview, she said. Tony met her gaze. Good sparring. She smiled wider, but her eyes revealed nothing. Then she swept out, entourage trailing behind her. The studio remained hushed. Gail broke the silence first. That was something. Nate gave a low whistle. That wasn't an interview. That was a heavyweight bout. Tony removed his earpiece slowly. His hands trembled just slightly. In the control room, ratings data lit up the monitors. Spikes higher than election coverage, higher than the Super Bowl recap. America had been watching, and it would not forget. Tony exhaled finally, leaning back in his chair. Morning TV will never be the same. And he was right.